We're interrupting that report to go live to that hearing in the Senate in Paris of Gerald Darmanin, the French Interior Minister, about the situation in Paris at the Champions League final on Saturday.
And a government that has nothing to hide. We are very happy about the power that we have and the time that we have to explain what happened last Saturday evening during the Champions League final with Liverpool and Real Madrid. We were there, both of us, the Minister and myself. It is obvious that this sports event was ruined, and we really regret the overspills that were sometimes unacceptable and that happened, and we are, of course, responsible for this, and we're going to explain the unravelling of them. And I hope that the President of the Commission of Laws and the Cultural Affairs Commission President will be able to find that we answer the questions they asked within the presentation that I'm going to give. And I would like to thank you, in fact, for accepting that this presentation be given with the senators in the room, because it will be on the social networks for those of you who are watching it. It seems obvious to us that for football fans, we've all been football fans, and I was a referee for many years, that it seems obvious that the negative image of this match was wounded our national pride, and things, of course, could have been better organized. Did we avoid the worst? Yes. Could we organize things better, and could we have anticipated better? No doubt we could have. Responsible for my own administration services, I regret the attacks that the functionaries of the Republic were under. They, of course, are under my responsibility. As a minister, I have to respond to the media, public opinion, and only people who are not responsible do not say it is their responsibility. I have been able to raise a great deal of trust within my ministry over the past few years. As President Mitterrand used to say, there is no point of honour with no difficulty. And of course, I am with the Minister of Sports to be able to go through the detail of this evening. Now, let's talk about the general situation that the Commissioner, the President of the Commission just mentioned. I'd like to remind you that the final of the Champions League was to take place in St. Petersburg. And given the geopolitical situation, we decided to take it to another stadium. France was a candidate to welcome the Champions League. And I'd like to remind you, and the Commissioner said this, the President said this, that the organization of this event is down to the UEFA and the National French Football Federation. Usually, during final matches, such as it should have been organized in St. Petersburg, it should have been organized in the past year and a half. It takes a year and a half. France and public authorities, in link with the French Football Federation and UEFA, organized this event in a period of 3 months. In addition to this, a strike by the railway service, RATP, was announced a few days before, and it moved supporters and fans from RARB towards RARD. And the main difficulty that we actually had with this, and the first negative beginning of the event in the evening, was that the flow in the RARD was 3.5 times bigger, according to the figures from the SNCF, than during a normal football match that brings in fans to the stadium in a sort of normal flow. As an example, a few days before the final of the French Cup, that was said to be more negative by the anti-hooliganism agencies. But for those of you who took the train to go to the stadium, you would have noticed that RARB is actually designed for this, with a much bigger exit, several exits, and a bigger space to access the stadium, and that RARD is much narrow, with a bottleneck below the motorway that leads directly, actually, to the French stadium and towards the British tribunes, because the problems only happened in front of the entrance for the UK fans. Now, what were the security provisions? You asked the question. There were 6,000 police forces and firefighters deployed. It was a major sports event, and it deployed and mobilized the most policemen and firefighters. They were UFMs, the mobile force units, 80 special forces and mobile police forces who were pre-organized around the stadium, 10 UFMs, and we'll say that this Since I've been a minister, we've never had so many. And following the memo that the President of the Commission told us that there were many UK fans with no tickets or a few hundred with fake tickets. All of those who came to Paris to support their team, the supporter or the manager of the Liverpool team said that fans had to go to Paris to support. These people were sent to the fan zone, one in the Cour de Vincennes, very far from the stadium. Approximately 40,000 people were there, generally fans from the United Kingdom or people supporting Liverpool. And there's another area that is just next to the French stadium, the fan zone called Real Madrid, that was based in Saint-Denis. And I'd like to tell you that the two fan zones that welcomed from 2 p.m. Nearly 50,000 people did not have any major problem, and did not lead to any major issue. There was also the securing of the airport, Charles de Gaulle. Most of the Spanish fans landed on special aeroplanes, which was not the case with UK fans. And of course, sensitivity was of the issue because the fans are always under control and monitored, and they sometimes are associated with people who are fairly delinquent and to meet up on the Champs-Élysées. So a unit was set up in Paris. There were reserve police forces in the stations. A lot of people came from London to the Gare du Nord, and there was also management of the passenger flow from Châtelet, Léal and Nation, our main RER stations that bring in the most people to the stadium. In Saint-Denis specifically, and I'm responding directly to your question, President of the Commission, 326 public security units to not mix up with almost 6,000 members or policemen from the public service. There's a difference, and this is one of the I would like to compare these 326 people in civilian clothes or in special clothes around the Stade de France to the 164 who were there for the French final. We doubled the number in forecast for this match, with the number of spectators the same. Number of public officers were there for public order and public security in Paris, in the fan zones that didn't exist for the French Cup, but also around the stadium. So to respond really directly to your question, there were enough police forces and police people for this event who were there, and they were of course expecting this to happen and had been for the past few weeks. Now, how did it happen? This is the way it happened. From 6:45 p.m., many spectators had already arrived, but since things had happened without incident, I'm not going to talk about it. There was a fight on the bridge over the lock, and then there were two intrusions into the UEFA village to the north, between the Spanish fan zone and the stadium. Very quickly, the police force intervened to stop things. 13 people were arrested, especially the ones who tried to go into the special car park situated. You can see the football stadium to the north, and they arrived here. Until 6:45, many people were arriving, but for the police force, they were managed, under management, and with spectators' flows managed, because in a difficult situation with the strike. So there's line 13. There are 3 metro stations that arrive at the stadium, and this happened without any incident, including within their access to the stadium. And then RERD came in, and I talked about the 3 exits to the stadium. From 6:45, pressure started from various thousands of fans, and the prefecture counted 15,000 people in the bottleneck that separates the exit of the RERD and that goes down the main avenue to arrive in the pre-filtering area, which is very important, and this explains why the evening was very difficult. So this is from 7 to 7:45 p.m. The French stadium decided, since the French Cup, only a week ago, faced with a certain number of difficulties, and to experiment in forecast with the Rugby Cup to have a new filtering system, and there were people in greater numbers. There were more people working in the stadium, 1,300. They had decided to have these people working in the stadium on entry to filter the fans before entry to the stadium. It was the second time we were doing this. First time it had happened without any incident, the French Cup, and secondly, to control the tickets for those who had tickets, and this well before, just after the exit ticket from RARD on entrance to the area into the stadium. It's not the police force controlling the tickets. I know that you understand this, but sometimes I say things that are misunderstood, so I'm saying this. But the mobile police force and the CRS supported the stadium workers to let people through who did not have tickets or with fake tickets, for example. Others, other than us, the French Football Federation, might say that among the tickets that they had, the Liverpool club had requested that all of these tickets should be printed out and be on paper format. All of the matches from the Champions League until the final were electronic. The request from Liverpool was paper. The 20,000 supporters who had right to these tickets asked for these paper formats. The Real Madrid fans had fewer. So all of them in Liverpool had these tickets. This is a real ticket and a fake ticket. So this is a real ticket, and behind the ticket, real or fake, there's a little square, and the stadium workers in the stadium have a chemical pen that they spread across it to see whether it's a fake or a real ticket. Because unfortunately, the technique of fake tickets, which is very lucrative, has already been tested and tried, especially and used in the UK, not just in the UK, but it ended up that in this first pre-filtering system that was put in place and that the stadium put in place, all over the place at each entrance to the stadium, the only entrance from RARD that brought in the most fans from the UK towards the areas to the south led to issues and problems. And according to the teams from the FFF and the French Stadium, over 57 to 70% of the tickets that they had were actually fake tickets, which does not mean that all of the supporters and fans had fake tickets. Some fans did not have any tickets. They tried to just get closer to the stadium for reasons they only understand. And among them, you had people also who had real tickets. And it's following this that the people with fake tickets actually thought that these were real tickets. And it's actually very difficult to differentiate between the two. You'll see this yourselves. Two types of fraud have been defined by us, and they are the subject of Article 40 that the Préfet has done and has been opened up in an investigation by Bobigny. So, first of all, we have people who bought tickets who we knew were more or less fake because they bought them on a parallel system for £50 each. And this enabled them, before we knew that there was a pre-filtering system, and when you were a UK fan, that you could go through and access the entrance of the stadium. After the pre-filtering, there is the portico, and this plans for the QR code reading of this ticket. And then you have people who bought a second type of fake ticket or fraudulent ticket. But honestly, these are people who bought their ticket 800 to 1,200 euros on fake sites or ticket areas where they were sold tickets, and they were led to believe that they were real tickets. There are sometimes pubs or bars where they're sold, and these very expensive tickets that really, really look precisely like the real ones. And we'll see, and this is what explains the figures by UEFA of the 1,200 fake tickets they counted. These are real fake tickets that really people believed, up until today, they still believe it, that they believed were real tickets, and the investigation will show that actually they are fake ones. So we had a lot of people in the RAR, 3.5 times more, because of the strike on RARB, but also because of the very high number of fans or spectators, above the 75,000 people that the stadium can welcome. In this pre-filtering area, in a very narrow area, the mass of people who could not go through because there were so many fake tickets spotted by the stadium workers was just accumulating. And faced with this accumulation of people and fans, there were some spillovers and problems that were noted by the police force. On the right-hand side, you have these are the tweets with these fake tickets on sale. This is on Twitter, and the social networks are full of these. On the Spanish side, they had the same number of spectators, no problem, no fake tickets, 20,000 Spanish fans, 20,000 UK fans. And for all the others, the ones who bought their tickets in France, who came without specifically supporting the clubs of Liverpool or Real Madrid, were able to get in with no problem, neither with fake tickets or with public order issues or with pre-filtering systems. The first problem, and we'll come back to this, and this is what led to the major confusion that we saw, the first issue was strengthened by the second issue. After the pre-filtering system, since we raised this pre-filtering system for for various reasons we'll talk about. It was on the British side. British fans and supporters ended up at the porticos, and then they had to have their QR code read. So we had the same numbers as the UFA. 2,589 fake tickets were scanned on the porticos. Several tickets were duplicated hundreds of times by the service provider. The service provider was Orange, and they put these porticos made them available to the stadium. A same ticket, someone who bought an official ticket, was sometimes replicated 760 times with the same number. You have numbers. This is your place in the stadium. The row. You know what a ticket looks like. 744 times. Some people bought tickets, and like true producers of fake tickets, they reproduce these tickets themselves. They reproduce tickets with numbers that existed really, but they reproduce the same number. So sometimes a ticket was sold 744 times. So in their confusion, people came into the stadium with no control, because some managed to do this, and there are testimonials on the social networks to say that they had the same ticket as someone else and they didn't know where to sit. That's a problem we did actually have. And in fact, all of the documents that I'm talking about and presenting, and I've made a copy of them for the Commission members, and I'll allow you to distribute them to the centres if you wish to. So this is from this service, this Orange service. Now let's go back to the pre-filtering system. 15,000 people around 7:30, women, men, young people, reduced mobility people. They're under the tunnel, under the A86, the road, below the stadium. The supporters are in Y, Z, and A. The Spanish fans are the other side. And faced with a very high number of people blocked and pushed back by the stadium workers because they don't have the right ticket, the police prefect raises or lifts the pre-filtering to avoid people getting squashed and killed. And I think this decision, Commissioner, is what avoided these dramas that could have occurred and that have happened in the history of football, with crowds, pushing around the stadiums. During this moment, at 7:45 p.m., no more pre-filtering. The pre-filtering system is lifted, and thousands of people, 15,000, and then people are coming out of the RERD at 7:45. It's an hour 15 before the official kickoff, so they end up at the stadium around the borders, so they are in the Y, Z, and A tribunes, which is where the problems occur. So the stadium workers no longer control the pre-filtering. They set themselves back, and the crowd has access to the portico, which is where we noted the 2,800 fake ticket bearers with the Orange system. Faced with the high number of people, and of course the figures are not reliable fully, but 5,000 to 6,000 people were pushing the railings and the opening gates. Of course, if you push 300 kilos against these gates, they open. And so the préfet takes a second decision. He brings back the police officers, the mobile police officers who were framing these crowds, and it's quite lengthy, the line when you look at it. So they put the police force and bring them back to the other side of the railings and to avoid them giving in. And this is what led to the problems, because between this area from RERD and the stadium, there are no longer any police forces, because they're asked to come back into the stadium to push back the railings and avoid these people coming and intruding and coming in to avoid people, of course, coming in illegally or running and spinning over into onto the pitch. So you have 3 doors, 3 porticos, 20,000 English supporters. And so we saw the images of very well-known people with tickets that didn't work. What do? They jumped over, went underneath the porticos, and after a while, no one used their ticket and they just went underneath and over the top. They tried to control the crowds and push back the thousands of individuals. And in terms of public order, from the end of the first time, there were no longer any more difficulties in the stadium itself. Now, evacuation at the end of the match happened at the end of the second half, without incident. Liverpool lost. No fight, though. No one running onto the pitch. And then we, of course, had new difficulties with people going back onto the public transport. There were no longer any police forces there. So the two fan zones with approximately 40,000 fans was carried out in an orderly fashion, apart from in one area where a restaurant owner was destroyed by the fans who had drunk too much. So the main question, President, is how do we end up with 40,000 extra people on top of the 75,000 that the stadium can hold? This is an important figure. We never said with the sports minister that we said that there were 35,000 fake tickets. We said it was 30 to 40,000 people, either without tickets or with fake tickets, who were added to the 75,000 who actually had real tickets. We have two potential sources for those of you who don't believe the police force. The first one is the French Federation of Football that communicated on this officially. You probably saw this. 75,000 tickets, not 80,000, were issued by the organization, the UEFA, FFF. Among these 75,000 people who should have gone to the stadium, unfortunately, we noted that 110,000 people were actually in the stadium and around the stadium and on the public transport routes. So 79,200 people, so more people than tickets, actually hopped onto the train to go to the stadium. We have an RER line number of people. We counted the number of people, and we would like to thank the train services for this. 21,000 buses, because all of the Spanish fans arrived by bus, and that's only the case for 1/3 of our UK fans, which was the problem. And then there were people who arrived in their own car, 6,000 taxis and private drivers, after having contacted the taxi services and the private Uber companies, and they found out the number of people, and 4,500 people came with their individual cars. So this, just to recap, is that according to the figures given by the train service authorities, we have the same figures. Give or take 5,000 is possible, and I regret personally that we were not able to use drones to give more pictures and to provide more pictures about what was going on. But we will be able to talk about this on another occasion. Line 13 of the RATP said 27,000 people got onto their line to go. RERD North, 37,000. There's an overrepresentation on RERD, which is generally the one with the fewer people. Normally it's RERB that has the most people, and that is, of course, run by the SNCF. For those of you who think there's a problem with figures, RERB, Gare du Nord, direct to Stade de France, is managed by the SNCF, and the RERTP and RERB figures with normal people is run by the REAT, so that's the southern part, and that's the difference with the 5,600 number of people that you see with the counting, and the 2,600 managed by the RATP for the RERB. So the total is 80,000 people going on public transport to the French stadium, whilst there are only 75,000 tickets and places there. So add to that taxis, G7 taxis, Uber drivers, people who arrived by bus, people who arrived by coach, people who arrived with their own car and went to the car park. And so we end up with a figure that's between 109,000 and 117,000 people. So that means a lot more than 34,000 people. So 42,000, up to 42,800 people. These people either ended up in the stadium or ended up staying around the stadium, or went even further than the edges of the stadium, because of the pre-filtering system. It didn't just not work in the Liverpool, for the Liverpool fans. Around the stadium, people couldn't access the stadium through these porticos because they didn't have tickets or had fake tickets. And then there's a second phenomenon that pushed back some of the supporters. For all of those who went to the French stadium, 4G doesn't work well. And when you go into a stadium and you watch a match, you try to find, when you're a fan, you try to find a signal for your phone. And this encouraged people to leave very quickly as well when they weren't able to go actually into the stadium. So how can we say that, I read the critiques about this, but imagine that there were 35,000 people more. But where were these 35,000 people? Well, the SNCF documented this, and we provided a memo about this at 22:52. The day after so 58 minutes after the first half, a lot of supporters started getting onto RERB. So what happened? There was it was pushed back. The beginning of the match was pushed back by half an hour. So 22:15 first half, 22:30, 23:15 end of the match. And when our SNCF was expecting the end of the match, because we had pushed it back with the RER lines after the pushing back the final whistle blowing, which is a prowess of the SNCF to bring back their drivers and their metros in a situation of emergency. Well, they had to anticipate on this, because from 10:45, 10:52, the SNCF says, but the images that we had and that you can see if you wish demonstrate that along the platform there are many red shirt fans, and unfortunately SNCF had to bring back new trains, and from 10:52 trains went back to Paris under conditions that were normal, because normally this was not a normal end of match since they were going back to Paris. So I'd like to compare this to the final of the French Cup that we had organised a few days previously. The French Cup match, it seems, according to the DNH, was more dangerous than the Champions League match. And some people know that some of the clubs of fans of the two clubs that were opposed and were problematic with antagonism between the fans. And this is a football match that we had been alerted to, and we had public officers to control. There were more spectators and more tickets sold for this French stadium than for the Champions League. You can see this. There were 162 police officers hired for the French Cup, 326 for the Champions League, 810 public policemen for the French Cup, and for the Champions League there were 1,170. There were zero attacks on police officers during the French Cup, 10 during the Champions League, people were hurt in the stadium, workers were hurt during the French Cup, and 10 people were actually hurt very seriously during the Champions League. 3 complaints were made during the French Cup at the French stadium. 35 were made for the Champions League, and 21 people were arrested during the French Cup. And in Saint-Denis, there were other people arrested for drunkenness in public. 81 people were arrested, and 29 of these people were in the French stadium. They were arrested because of intrusion. Half of the people who were arrested jumped over the porticos, and they were British citizens. And among the 52 outside of the stadium who were arrested, the 13 we saw earlier on were on the special car park, and the others were either carried out either attacks or raids, and these were there were quite a lot of people arrested. Among the 81 arrests that we made, 25 people were arrested from outside the European Union. to answer your question. I deplore having to give nationalities for people who are arrested, but I do have to respond to fake news that has been going around in the media. In Paris, Seine-Saint-Denis, altogether, 105 people were arrested, with 73 people kept in custody, and the Minister of Home Affairs does not decide on criminal pursuits for the people we arrest. So I'm sometimes the one who can deplore pursuits, but I'm just talking about the arrests that were made by the National Police Force and Gendarmerie. Now, what can we do from now to better understand what happened, especially vis-à-vis the people who did not get in when they should have, and people who were not able to make complaints because they're British and Spanish citizens. And coming from the UK or Spain, I'm not underestimating the fact that we don't necessarily have the same way of doing things as if we were someone coming from Mont. So I am going to suggest that from Monday, French citizens and British citizens will be able to file a complaint in their countries. I'm going to send French police forces to Madrid and to the United Kingdom, to Liverpool or London. I will have an IT platform set up in English and Spanish, and pre-drafted letters in Spanish and English with French police response to see what is the follow-up to this, and see who sends in a complaint with video to support it. And then we're going to investigate these complaints, and President, we will communicate the results of this investigation, because some of the complaints have probably not been made because some of these people were going back to their country the following morning or in the evening. The Bobigny prosecution services have also set up a case for these fake tickets. UEFA has also set out an investigation, and so other countries can also carry out investigations on these fake tickets. But I'm not aware of other countries having opened up investigations for these tickets. But we're happy to cooperate if that is the case. And thirdly, I think that we need to draw conclusions for what comes next. The sports minister will talk about this, and let's talk now about public order. Now, what did we do? We probably underestimated the number of police people and public security officers. It was difficult to predict and forecast, but being a minister and being responsible means planning more. We didn't think of public order degenerating so much, and raising the pre-filtering systems, which means that the space between the RARD and the stadium were left alone, with a lot of people making the most of the confusion moment to carry out attacks. So I think we need to draw conclusions from this and plan more police force people and public security officers. So a public security officer in full gear is not there to intervene against delinquents within a range of 100 meters. It's not their job. And for France-Denmark on Friday, despite the fact that danger is lower and most of the tickets are electronically based, bar a few hundred, and the minister will talk about this, we'll draw conclusions from this for the match, and we'll draw all of this experience and learn from it for the next match. We also will set up a whole load of camera or video protection systems along the railway lines and the REI lines. And next month we will equip all of this train line. And thirdly, we need to anticipate on what happened here in the stadium. In case of an influx of people, or a strike, or a breakdown, or a fire, or a gathering, any type of gathering is possible, maybe not 30,000 people, but we need to plan for an emergency situation to fight public insecurity. The second subject is public order. I'm saying here that the decisions that have been made have been able to save lives. There have been inappropriate moments where people have carried out inappropriate actions. Police forces or mobile police units, 2 EGPN complaints have been filed, and when the Madrid fans and the UK fans make a complaint or file a complaint, they will be able to also complain about the IGPN. And I've seen this. Public order and the use of tear gas was contrary to the rules, and I've asked for sanctions to be applied by the police prefecture against these police officers. In this context, when ticket holders push, and despite the fact that in this crowd there are people who are very honest and right and who are going to see the football match as fathers and mothers and parents, so these crowds pushed, and this led to, and to avoid it leading to people being squashed, the police officers used tear gas. Or was it the right thing to do? We need to have a review of this. I know Préfet Cadeau is working on this to see whether, in the context of sports events and exceptional events, this type of event has never happened in this to this extent in France. So we need to have a look to see how we're going to deal with it. The mobile police force did not have any other way of dispersing the crowd. Otherwise, they would have had to have let out LBD or anti-crowd grenades. So this tear gas avoided people being hurt or badly injured or worse, but it did lead to children having problems with health problems, and I really deplore the fact that these children have been hurt. But of course, all the documents are available to you, and the memo that you will have in your file does not say that there were thousands of fake tickets. So since all of the documents are public but never fully transcribed, there are two potential problems. The memo from the DLH, the first one is that people will try to come in by ruse into the sports perimeter by using medical uniforms or police uniforms, by dressing up. Now, this forecast by the ULH did not happen, luckily. And secondly, and as has been noted during the finals with the Liverpool team, we've never had problems with the Madrid fans or other Madrids. Several hundreds of Liverpool fans will attempt to go into the stadium by pushing the porticos and the different access doors. So we planned, one, the fan zone, and two, the increased number of police officers to keep the peace, as I meant, that were not, of course, enough for tens of thousands of extra people. There was a dysfunction. And this report was not sent to the police prefecture as opposed to during other matches, and this is something that was malfunction in the system in the ministry. I'm going to draw conclusions from this and take stock. I don't think it would have changed much because by definition the concerns and preoccupations were not sent in because there were not thousands of people as planned, but the police force officers should have been aware of this memo. Thank you, Minister, for making these comments and your report. I would like to tell you that 21 senators and ministers have expressed themselves and requested the floor to ask questions. Now we're going to hand the floor to the Minister for Sports, President for the Laws Commission and President for the Cultural Affairs and Education Commission, Mr. Lafont. Ladies and gentlemen, senators, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be here today for the first time as Minister for Sports and Olympic and Paralympic Games, and I would have loved to have been talking to you in more positive circumstances. Our approach with the Foreign Affairs Minister is one of transparency, full transparency. And so I'll respond very precisely and clearly to the questions that you might want to ask me after my presentation. Now, during my preliminary words, I would like to first of all say how I'm devastated for the people whose evening was ruined and for these Liverpool fans who had bought valid tickets and were not able to attend the match. I, with the Minister for Foreign Affairs, wish to be as transparent as possible, but also I wish to be as responsible as possible. So on Monday at 11 a.m., I brought together all of the stakeholders involved in the event to set the responsibilities of each and every one and draw as many learnings as possible from the event. UEFA, as an organizer of the event, the French Football Federation, with certain aspects of responsibility by delegation from UEFA, who was in control of managing the event, the managers of the stadium, and on the state, the police force, and the prefecture, the DNNH, and the Mairie of Saint-Denis as a representative of the high community for the match. Now, let me talk about the three main elements that I have obtained from this meeting, feedback meeting. First of all, the opinions converged and interpretations converged as to what happened. We all had different ways of looking at the event, that these aspects were complementary, but during these 2 hours of intense work, nothing was out of line, and I'll come back to this. The second element, and this echoes similar events, there's a conjunction of events and circumstances and facts, and these are, in the words of the stadium, something that led to dynamic and exponential processes. Each step forward amplified the difficulties and led to more and further difficulties. And the third element is the root cause of the very high number of fake tickets. A number of tickets that was previously not seen and difficult to forecast. And before we talk about this at greater length, I would like to mention two other elements that within the Foreign Affairs Minister's speech was very important. First of all, in the memo that I myself had not read beforehand, and that the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Interior Minister read to me, it said that supporters that would have fake tickets, and it also talked about 4 types of problems that might occur. First of all, it said that some of them will be holding fake tickets and that they will attempt to use these fake tickets to get into the stadium. Others will try to get into the stadium by using subterfuge, dressing up in police officers' uniforms, cleaners' uniforms, or stadium workers' uniforms. This is something that didn't happen. And then thirdly, there was a risk by the DNLH that several hundred UK fans would try to get into the stadiums by pushing through the porticos and the access gates. And you can see that within this expression, the high proportion of fake tickets was not mentioned. Among the 50,000, we were not aware of the fact that the number of fake tickets could be that high. And another element that I would like to mention is the fact that the Minister of Home Affairs mentioned this, is that we organized this event in a period of 3 months, and we were not aware of the number of fans until very soon before the event. So the specific risks that they might lead to and the time that we had to analyze all of this was not very substantial. The Minister for Home Affairs was very comprehensive in what he said about everything, so I'm not going to